Hello there. Welcome to another midweek meditation. I am Rev.Dev, and this is a weekly meditation that I do for my churches in Hyde Park, Bakersfield, and Jeffersonville, Vermont. This is also a meditation that I do for anybody who's joining in over YouTube and is looking to nurture a progressive faith. If you're looking for a second opinion on how we can build up a loving faith within our lives, I hope that you like and subscribe, and please feel free to share these videos with anybody you feel called to. Hello, welcome to my meditation. I am Rev.Dev, and today we are talking about spiritual wealth. And in particular, I'd like to talk about what Jesus says in Luke chapter 16, verses 1 through 13, in his parable about the bad manager. This is a story about a person who's caught between the world of wealth and the world of God. And Jesus says right at the end of the story, you can't serve God and wealth. And I think that this story does a good job of visualizing what it is like to be torn between a world where wealth is the most important thing and a world where God's love supports you. I struggle with it, and I think that maybe there are a lot of places where we can talk about sort of the transition, the duality, the murky nature of living in a world where we're pulled between love for our brothers and sisters, love for God, love for ourselves, and just loving, the things that we like, the things that we want to do, loving wealth. And so let's talk a little bit about this passage. I'll pull it up, we'll read over it, and then we will talk. I'll talk about it, and feel free to respond, comment, or share this video in whatever way you feel called.
Our reading today comes from Luke 16, 1 through 13. Then Jesus said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him, the manager, and said to him, 'What is this that I hear about you? Give me an account of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer.' Then the manager said to himself, 'What will I do? Now that my master has taken the position away from me, I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am dismissed as manager, people will welcome me into their homes.' So, summoning his master's debtors, one by one, he asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' And this person answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. He said to him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly and make it 50. Then he asked another, 'How much do you owe?' And that person replied, 100 containers of wheat. He said to him, 'Take your bill and make it 80. And his master, the manager's master, commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much, and whoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful with the dishonest wealth, who will entrust you with the true riches? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? No slave can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one or love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth."
And so I'll be up front. This passage from Luke 16 I find confusing, and I struggle with it at times. But I do think that the message of what Jesus is trying to share is pretty clear. In verse 13, Jesus tells us you cannot serve God and wealth. And that is very consistent throughout Jesus' ministry. I know that there are trends, there are traditions in Christianity that say, wealth is the be-all that ends all, and if you are not wealthy, then God doesn't favor you. Don't listen to those people, please. Don't listen to that prosperity gospel stuff. And I would say, however, that what we should be listening to is that call to love that Jesus consistently within the gospel tells us to value above things within this material world. Because Jesus really did believe that there were two different worlds that were wrestling with each other in his day and age. And I think that we nowadays can recognize that to a degree as well. There is within our lives a call to do the right thing, to be good people, to be moral people, and to do right by others. But there is also a struggle within this world for us to look out for ourselves and to look out for our own pleasure and our own well-being and the things that we like over our neighbors. I think that that is a reality that we face. I think Jesus would frame that as the conflict between God's world and this world of wealth. And so in this passage from Luke 16, this story about the bad manager, the corrupt manager, we have here a man who is trapped between that world of God and that world of wealth. Living within that world of wealth, the manager was only looking out for himself. He was using practices that were underhanded to increase the debt that people owed to his master, and when they called him out on it, he lost his job. And all of a sudden he was cast out from this world of wealth, and he realized being in a world of wealth without any wealth doesn't do anything for you. And so he was forced to transition into this world of God and this world of love. And he chose to use his power while he had it left to settle accounts with his master's business partners, get in good with them so that they would look out for him when he no longer had that position, no longer had that power, no longer had that wealth at his disposal. I do not agree with the reasoning behind the manager's choice to do the right thing. And that's the reason why I struggle with this passage. I don't think it is okay for us to do the right thing just because we're looking out for ourselves. And I think that there are many Christians and many traditions in Christianity where the ends justify the means. It's okay for us to scare people into doing the right thing. It's okay for us to force people into doing the right thing. It's okay for us to take away people's right to choose the right thing as long as they do the right thing. I do not agree with that. And I don't think that that's necessarily what Jesus is trying to show in this passage either. I think that when it comes to freedom of choice, Jesus is very clear about that. But I do think what the message that Jesus is trying to share here is that even if you choose to do the wrong thing, there's going to be a point where you're going to need the realm of God's love. You're going to need love over wealth because love is more long lasting. Love is more valuable, and love is going to be more helpful to you personally. And so I think that that is a strong message. And I think that that's something that we can take to heart because, we hear those, we hear those stories. We see those stories about the person who's super successful and then all of a sudden they lose everything and they redefine themselves. They rediscover the value of living and the value of having friends and the value of having people that love you. We love those stories. But I think very often we don't actually experience that sort of transition within our lives. And honestly, I don't think a hard transition like what this manager went through is something that most of us are going to have to experience. I think we're going to have to look at our lives, and I think that Jesus is calling us to look in our lives, and he's asking us, are we valuing the things that are important? I'm in a family that is probably low middle, if not low income, and it's hard. It is hard to get by, figuring out how you're going to keep your, you're going to keep your health care going, figuring out how you're going to pay off student debts, figuring out how you're going to pay a mortgage. Thank God we have a home. And there are people in the world who are struggling more than me and my family, and I know that. When you're struggling to find a bed to sleep in, or food to eat, or a roof to have over your head, it's hard for us to take time and value our connections with other people, our connections with neighbors, our connections with friends, because the need that you have right in front of you is so great. On the flip side, I think that when you have things in abundance, it's easy for us to immerse ourselves into those things that give us joy. Maybe you have a fancy sports car you drive during the summer. Maybe you like to go out on your ATVs, or you like to go jet skiing, and when it's warm out, or you have a fancy gaming computer that you like to spend hours and hours on. That's me. It's easy to lose yourself in that personal joy, but not to share it with others. And Jesus is telling us that we need to check ourselves when it comes to that sort of thing. We need to check ourselves when it comes to what it is we are putting value into, what it is we're committing ourselves to. I think that it's good for us to take joy out of this world, but it's also important for us to use that joy in a way that deepens our connections to other people. And I think that that's where Jesus saying, if you have not been faithful with dishonest wealth, who will entrust you with true riches? We have wealth that we get, maybe not always through the best of means. Maybe we benefit from systemic racism. Maybe we benefit from living on stolen land. Maybe we benefit from being a part of a religious group that is considered to be, America's religion of choice. These are not necessarily the best ways in which we can get influence or power or authority within the world, but we need to ask ourselves, are we putting our stock? Are we putting our value? Are we committing ourselves to that power and authority? Or are we able to use that sort of power and authority in a way that shares with others? If you are a person with making 6 digits and you adopt a child who is from a position that is low income, where they wouldn't have a opportunity to get an education, to get good jobs, to basically grow up in a safe community, I often remind folks that's a tremendous way in which you can share the power, the authority, the position, the benefits that you have with other people. And that is just a small example. We can do that by philanthropy. We can do that also by paying taxes, keep in mind. We can do that by being active in our community and helping people out. Maybe working at the food shelf, or maybe working at, me being a little selfish, your local church. What we do with our wealth is important. Whether you got it by playing by the rules, or whether you got it through inheritance, whether it came from a source that was honest or dishonest, Jesus calls us to use what we have in a way that is loving. And that is the important thing. And so, yes, the reasoning behind this manager's choice to do the right thing, I do not agree with. But I do think it says something that ultimately this person chose to do the right thing. And that is why it's important to have forgiveness within faith, but that's a topic for another day. Nowadays, I think we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we put value in? What are the things that really make our lives wealthy? We may not have a lot of money, but maybe we're rich in friendship. Or maybe we have a lot of money, but we're poor in friendship. These are things that we're constantly going to be divided by. And Jesus tells us we're going to have to choose at some point. Do we serve God, or do we serve